Welcome back to imaginAviation. Perseverance and innovation. They go hand in hand, but not always in an obvious manner. When one looks at the stages of innovation, they seem challenging but relatively linear and straightforward on paper. But in real life, innovation rarely follows a smooth path. Failure, stumbling blocks, doubt, and sometimes pure silence all rear their ugly heads during the innovative process. Research has shown us that the simple act of perseverance is a component that has led to more innovations in our society than many of the other factors combined. But when these challenges present themselves, will we be ready or have the fortitude and sometimes personal courage to persevere through the tough times? Today, we are fortunate to present to you a wonderful conversation between NASA's Associate Administrator for Aeronautics, Bob Pierce, and our special guest and the inventor of BenjiLock, Robbie Cabral. Robbie is a testament to how perseverance serves as a catalyst for successful innovation. As a reminder, after this chat, we will have time for questions and answers, so please feel free to populate the questions in the conference's IO tool, and your link is in the YouTube chat. Without further ado, I would like to welcome to the imaginAviation stage Mr. Bob Pierce and Mr. Robbie Cabral. Bob, I'll turn it over to you to give a proper welcome to our guest, and I'll come back on to field some questions for both of you a little later.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. I really appreciate it. And as in every year, it is great to be back here at imaginAviation. I always have the opportunity to talk to someone really quite remarkable and someone who's got some just wonderful lessons for us here at NASA Aeronautics. I think the theme this year on the power of perseverance is one that's really meaningful. I say to folks, if there was one gift I had to bestow upon an individual, it would be with that of perseverance for all the reasons that Steve just articulated. Nothing is easy in this life. There's always stumbling blocks. There's always hurdles. And it's really the perseverance to overcome those that is the difference between success and failure oftentimes. So with that, I really am so pleased to introduce Robbie Cabral, as Steve said, the inventor and the CEO of BenjiLock. And I'd like to give Robbie a couple of minutes here just to tell his story for those of you who haven't heard it. I think it's just a tremendous story and one that is just really fascinating. So, Robbie, thanks for being here, and I'll turn it over to you for a few minutes.
Well, Bob, first and foremost, I'm very happy and excited to be here. Not a lot of people know a little bit about my story, but I was born and raised originally in the Dominican Republic. And my whole life, I've always been a grinder, in less words. I was raised by my mom only, single parent. So that really taught me a lot of hard work and how to get from point A to point B and navigate things out. And long story short, I came from back home to the dreams of becoming a musician here in the United States. That's been always kind of like my second passion now, but it's always been my passion. I used to be a singer, and I kind of thought that, well, let's go to the US and try to make magic happen. But as a lot of musicians know, when you come to the United States, it's 50,000 bands trying to compete for that label or record deal and all that. And things didn't pan out. But, I'm a grinder, in less words. So long story short, I decided to start my life, and with time I got married, I had kids, but again, it's always been tough to get that job, and applying and always getting denied and all that. And one time I finally got a job, and 6 months into it, sadly, I got laid off from work. And the same day I got laid off from work, my younger daughter Livia was born. So that really hit me hard, and I went back home, and I'm like, wow, now I'm stuck at home, depressed, happy, but also like, what's next? Because my wife is a teacher, so she's going back to work, and now I'm stuck at home with my little one and the other two that are a little bit bigger. So um, I decided to do better for myself and for my family. So I started going to the gym, and one day I noticed a gentleman left the key inside the locker. And I said, wow, how come there's not a lock that you can open with a fingerprint, but also with a key? Because I noticed that the manager at the gym was trying to bolt cut the lock and all this stuff. And I'm seeing all this in front of my eyes. And that's when the light bulb opened up. And basically, that's kind of how the whole BenjiLock story started.
Thanks, Robbie. That's great. It shows sort of that combination of inspiration and perseverance, right? You know, in order to innovate, that idea's got to be there. And who knows where that inspiration is going to come from? It's a great story, going to the gym and just happen to notice something that made something click inside you. So let's just explore a little bit that what it means to persevere. So obviously there's a long road from having an idea to having a company that's selling thumbprint enabled locks. So tell us a little bit about that. What hurdles did you confront along the way, and how did you get over them?
Well, I think, one thing that I want to share with everyone is that sometimes life puts you in different situations and you're not expecting it. And, like I kind of have said before, that never really envision in creating a product, but sometimes life just puts you in that moment that the light bulb pops in, and why not take the risk? And basically, one of the first hurdles for me personally was that I'm not really an engineer. It's not really my forte. I'm very more of a creative. So I thought to myself, okay, I have this idea. How do I start it? And just doing simple research on Google and how to bring a product to market, everything came to like, well, you have to have some sort of a IP to protect your idea before you actually start putting money and sweat and equity in it. So I decided to do a little research, and lo and behold, I bump into a legalzoom.com and found, like, the cheapest route of trying to find someone to help me legally. And I think I shared this story before, but when I applied for the IP and the technology, I guess the attorney that got his my file in his hands, he said, "Wow, I always get all these applications on the daily, but I never saw a Latino name applying for the IP." And himself being a Mexican attorney, he said, "For some reason, I don't know who this person is, but I'll put a little effort into it and see what's out there." So that really helped me out. And I did not know that. Years after, I kind of learned that from him. And sometimes it's just, those things just happen for a reason. And to kind of connect it back in that end is that I think I thought a lot about how to go about this project as a musician, because myself, when I used to be a singer, I wasn't the best at playing drums or bass or piano or guitar, but I knew that I had to assemble a team to get to that song or hit. So I took that same mentality in creating the prototype and creating a brand name and bringing this IP to market and kind of assembling a team kind of like that, using that music mentality. And I think that really helped me out a lot.
Thanks, Rob. You bring these other flavors to the table. That the ability to, unbeknownst to you, but creating somewhat of a personal connection, right? That someone saw something and wanted to take that extra look. And then, the other thing you bring up on being a musician, I think is really interesting. One of the challenges, I think, in doing something that's inherently complex is there's no real sort of one path to to success or to a solution. It really does, as you said, it takes a band, it takes a team, and to me, that's just an element of diversity, right? So often, we think about diversity in terms of race, ethnicity, gender, and things like that, but it's also what is your what are the things that you're passionate about? What's your background? What have you've grown up studying and so forth, and oftentimes, here in NASA, obviously, a lot of a lot of us are technically trained. On the other hand, though, if you want new ideas, it's good to bring in people with different backgrounds who see things differently. So, who knows if I was in that same gym, I would have seen that lock the same way you did, and maybe it's just something about the way you think and so forth that let you see that, and I think that's a really important lesson. So, obviously, like as you said, you're not an engineer by training, although I know from your story you spent a lot of time kind of self-training yourself. But by the same token, like you said, you had to get a team together. How, how did how did you go about doing that? Where did you look to get those other members of the band?
Well, it's interesting, once I kind of knew that, okay, you have to have a IP in place. So I started putting that on the side, working on it. Then I decided, okay, I need a product developer because I have all these ideas, I have all these designs. I kind of have an idea of the internals and all that, but I need to knock on doors and see who can help me bring this to the next level, or at least have something, an MVP, something that you can showcase. And believe it or not, it all goes back to before even coming with this idea on applying to jobs, always getting a no, an answer. And I knock on a lot of product developers, and a lot of them told me, uh, no, pass. I got bigger clients. It's not going to work out. You don't have the funding. You don't have the money. Why are you going to do this? And a lot of whys and a lot of no's. And after like knocking on probably 9 or 10 product development companies, one decided, well, I'll help you, but you'll be like the last of my projects because I have bigger clients. And so I kind of had to be very persistent with that person for a while, to at least have something workable. But as you can see, there's always hurdles that you go through it, and it's up to you if you decide, should I just leave it like that and go about my life, or keep it going. And I'm sure that this can relate to a lot of people right now watching that, whether you're with your family and all that, you have to put yourself in other people's situation. In my case, I have a wife that is working, I have 3 kids, and I have a lot of noise behind it going, what are you doing? uh Great idea, but you're not bringing money to the table at home. You got to pay rent, you got to pay mortgage, all this other stuff is piling up, and it's very hard to navigate that. And you have to be keep it in a very positive environment to see how you can continue forward. um
That's incredible. I mean, you know, um, you bring you bring those other elements into the picture, and boy, it does get really challenging. And so it makes me think, that when whether it's here at NASA or any place else, folks folks have kind of great ideas, and you certainly need that idea, you need that inspiration, but in the end, I think, what we do is we invest in people, right? And, so because it gets back to that idea of perseverance, right? You want to see in someone that passion and that willingness to sort of stick it out despite the hurdles and the hardships and so forth. So so folks saw that in you. What do you take from that? What did people see in you that said, "Hey, I want to invest in this guy. It's a great idea, but there's a lot of good ideas, but this person I believe is going to do something with it."
well, I think that the first word that you kind of mentioned is kind of like the topic is perseverance. It's being persistent, but also in a way that and I think it all depends on the person too. I've always been very positive, very humble. I think that my beginnings, it doesn't matter how high I get or how low I get. I've always been the same person. Um, you know, a lot of the things that I learned in life is that, when I came to America, I used to work everywhere from housekeeping to, valet to door, at restaurants, you name it. I mean, I've done everything. And I think I've always been the same person, regardless of your status. I can relate with that. So I think that really helped me out a lot in continuing this journey and unveiling this prototype at, for example, CES. And doesn't matter how many people told you at the moment that, hey, great idea, and then others will say, wow, that's, I've thought of that, or that's not going to work out. And you just take it all in. It doesn't matter if it's negative or positive, because if you believe in what you have and you have a solution for it, then just go with it. And I think using all that energy, that kind of really brought me to that next step of stepping into the Shark Tank and convincing a lot of people inside there.
Yeah, I don't. It's it's interesting, Robbie. I think that the humility that you display. I don't even know if you know you see that um, how much that means to people. It really just it brings people it brings people together, right? That you know that willingness and that sort of, I think, natural instinct or natural characteristic you have around humility. It creates a safe space for people to come in and feel that willingness to talk and to do things. But you mentioned Shark Tank, and I watched your episode. I watch the show every so often. I can't watch it every time, but I found your episode really interesting. What was that? I know there must be a process just to get on the show, let alone like convince the investors and especially Mr. Wonderful to say, yeah, this is the thing I want to invest in. So what was that like, and what did that teach you?
Well, one of the things that I really enjoy was that the whole journey that you go through is sometimes you put yourself in positions that you don't know. I mean, I think it's all about the universe. It's very interesting. Like I told you, I never envisioned creating a product, but the idea sparked in a moment that things were not going well in my life personally. And then throughout that journey of working on this for 3 years, unemployed, believe me, trying to do a lot of freelance work and trying to keep the wife and the kids and everyone safe and sound until I kind of navigated all this. Then, after going and taking the chance of, without no money, let me put myself out there. Where do I unveil this product? And then I found this show, Consumer Electronics Show, CES. I unveiled it there. But then a lot of people are walking at the show and they say, hey, that product could be a great fit for Shark Tank. You should go and do it. There's a casting call a corner from here. I've never even seen the show, never even heard of it. But I guess the opportunity of, like, it's kind of like applying to a job. Put yourself out there. If it happens, great. If not, at least you take the risk. So I took the risk, did the casting, forgot about it, came back home, and again back to the grind of taking care of my kids and following up on leads and seeing if this is gonna work out or not. I get a phone call and they said, hey, we're interested in your story and your background and your product. And that's a 6 month or so process, and there's probably 50,000 plus applications every season. So in order for me to get that call, that was a major deal for me, and I said, well, might as well take the opportunity and do it. So stepping into that, I'll tell you, I probably didn't eat for a day. I was very anxious, but when I went in, I was myself, just like I am with you here. I didn't invent numbers or nothing like that. I was just myself, explain everything how I see it and the vision that I had and the product. And I think that doing that really helped me out a lot, because uh, once I heard the first offer, I really started getting emotional, because it's kind of like, you go through so many hurdles creating this product for the 3 or so years, and a lot of naysayers telling you it's not going to work. And believe it or not, it's hard to say, but even your family circle, it because it's hard to understand. But then when I heard the first yes and the second yes, and all these guys telling me that, and then Kevin saying, hey, I'm in, that really made me emotional, because then I said, wow, there's someone else believing in this beyond myself. And that's when I learned that it's always great to be open, to collaborate, to partnerships, and hear someone else's perspective. So
Yeah, that's fantastic. And so it kind of leads me to, so now you've gone through that, um, and made it to the other side successfully, and by a lot of definitions, that's kind of the American dream, right? To do that. And but you've done all that, and you've seen the process. And so I know others must probably um, approach you with, "Hey, I got this great idea," like, and either for you to pick up those ideas or help them with those ideas. So, kind of how do you view all that now? What's next, sort of for you, and how do you take that next step? How do what's that? It's a whole different set of hurdles, a whole different set of circumstances that you've got to now navigate through. And you've done it once from, starting from scratch, but now it's probably a little different. You've got a new set of circumstances that you've got to think about and make sure that you know, you maintain that, that humility, but you make the right decisions, and so that you can continue to be successful into the future. So how does how do you how do you navigate that space? How do you see what's next?
yeah, it's interesting because one of the things that I learned is that when you start something, you're thinking, well, let me do it my way, and I'm rolling, and I'm going in, and I'm doing this all myself. And one of the things that Kevin even brought up the show was like, hey, Robbie, if you're interested in licensing, I'll go in with you, because believe it or not, Robbie, if you try to do this on your own, it's not easy at all. If you thought it was hard, what you've done to this point is going to get harder when you get to the other side of dealing with distribution and retailers and product development and manufacturing and the whole hurdles. And especially, as you know, with everything going on in the world of manufacturing and what we went through COVID and all that, I couldn't imagine uh, doing all that on my own. So one of the things that opened up a question for me was that, yeah, I'm interested in it, but I really like the name Benji Lock. I really want to keep the name Benji Lock, and because I just feel like it's refreshing, and the younger generation loves it, my kids love it, and I can see that's what's up and coming. I don't want to rely on something that it's already been there, done that. I want to bring something fresh, and we decided to go that route, and that's why now you see a lot of the Benji Lock locks out there, from regular locks, travel locks, bike locks, door locks, because we decided to go that route. And then the future of it, basically now we see it as whatever the Benji Lock technology could be applicable of biometric and key, we could go in. So there's going to be a lot of exciting stuff happening. And again, I'm still the same humble person, still working from my, living room / desk office. Um, and, every day I get people asking me, hey, I got this idea. How do I go about it? And it's on the daily, and it's hard to keep up, but I do my best to try to respond to everyone separately, and give them my tips. And because sometimes, it's not only about the idea. You could have the idea. The most difficult part is the whole execution of trying to navigate all these things that go in that idea, because it's not really only about, well, let me get the IP or patent. That's one step. You could have the IP and the patent, but if you don't have the whole brand, if you don't have the story behind it, if you don't have the passion to continue, it's not gonna work out. And it's not about just let me sit down here and license it and just collect a check, because it doesn't really work that way. Um, so it's a lot of things that go into play beyond the idea, that I try my best to kind of explain to everyone, that it's not only the idea, it's about the execution and being passionate about what
Yeah.
you love, whether it's work, anything at all that you want to pursue in life. If you're passionate about it and you put a little bit of effort every day in it, it will happen.
So do your kids want to be inventors, or or you helping them kind of follow their passions?
I let them follow their passions. You know, uh, some of them they've been trying to create stuff here and there, but I've seen it on when I do career days here in LA. I do different career days for different schools and all that, and the amount of ideas that I get from kids is incredible. So you can see that there's a lot of a lot of creativity out there and a lot of innovation that is gonna come, uh, which is gonna be very fun and exciting. But with my kids, yeah, I just try to let them be themselves. And I am actually pushing one though in the whole baseball route because I used to play baseball, so I would love for him to kind of get to that next step. But at the end of the day, it has to be a passion for them. If it's not, then you can't force it.
Well, given that who, whichever child that is, given the type of perseverance you've shown, I'm sure that if they really want to be a baseball player, they'll find a way to do it. So, hey, there's I don't know if you've been following the chat on the side here, but there's just obviously lots of folks find your story inspirational, and I think find you personally just again the your humility and charisma just find it very very attractive. So let me invite Steve back onto the stage because I think there's probably some questions that from the audience, and I don't want to hog all the time here. So let's see what folks have to say.
Yeah, thanks, Bob and Robbie. Thanks. What an excellent conversation. And there is a question that almost leads right off of the topic you were just talking about. Rob, you mentioned, a component of your success is being yourself, always staying true to yourself. So there's a question of what advice you'd give the younger generation. And again, you mentioned the school visits you go to, and your children. Your children are probably part of that next generation, so they're going to enter into the workforce next decade or so. What advice would you give any of those folks of how to persevere and how to go forward with some of the challenges and successes you've had?
Hmm. That is interesting. I will say probably, I'm kind of like a bit old school on that end. Uh, I don't know why, but like I'm a person that I kind of write everything down. I guess you have your mobiles and all that, but I'm a person that, for example, like every day I have a to-do list, and it could be a long to-do list, but if you're able to at least write down your goals for the day, the night before, then you're already kind of getting prepared. Okay, doesn't matter what hurdles I'm getting throughout that day, I gotta achieve some of those goals. And I think if you use that kind of, you know, I don't know how to explain it, but that kind of methodology of putting yourself set up some goals on the daily, even if it's minimal, doesn't have to be that much. Uh, I'm You'll get to that point because not a lot of people do it. And believe it or not, I see it all the time that hey, I want to do this or I want to do that. I want to apply for this job or I want to get to that, but then you don't put the effort in it. And even if you put a little bit every day, I'm telling you, it does go a long way, and you'll get there.
Yeah, and Bob, that lesson translates to the NASA workforce as well, as you can imagine, setting those goals.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It is sort of the sort of the simplest instantiation of what we do every day with project planning and setting out milestones, and then putting all the little the checkpoints in to get to those milestones. But I think that's exactly right. That if you can, that's the difference between sort of a dream and a goal, right? Is that goal, if you just put some things down on paper and hold yourself accountable to what you've written down. Make yourself check, either look at it and either check it off or don't check it off, but force yourself to kind of look at it and hold yourself accountable, right? That
Hey, and believe it or not, vision boards do help. Because I remember I created a whole vision board. I don't know where I put it. I wish I would have kept it, but I remember I did a whole vision board, and I put a lot of pictures and all that, and a lot of those things actually ended up working out later on, like years after. But it does help when you have a vision board and you put it in paper.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think some of
that's
that's the
great.
creativity that you talked about, right? That background of being a musician and so forth, right? You know, there's a lot of connection between that auditory side and the visual side and so forth. They build off each other.
Yeah, and Robbie, you mentioned everything you mentioned earlier about the components of your perseverance. One of the things that struck me was taking in all comments, taking in all information, taking in all reactions from everyone. That's not always positive. And if you talk about the creativity and the passion that goes into even that storyboard you create, that vision board, it's in your heart, it's in your soul, it's part of you, it's your passion that drives the perseverance. Well, sometimes those hard comments are not what we want to hear, and they kind of stab at your soul. It stab at your passion. How do you control your emotions at times like that to kind of swallow the pride, swallow the the harshness of a comment, and extrapolate some really good criticism and comments from that?
Well, I think you have to. I mean, it's so interesting because it all goes back to in the as a musician. They always say that when you're singing, you have 100 people clapping, and then there's always one that say you suck or you're horrible or whatever. And sometimes that's the one that sticks to the singer or to the guitar player, which is true. But then you have to learn how to navigate on, that's great. Maybe there's something that I'm doing wrong, but you can take it in and see, okay, what can I fix that maybe I can convert that person into a new fan? Take it as a constructive, you know, uh, thing for you to do, whether it's in your business or your work and all that. So I had probably, out of 100, I will always get 90 great and then 10 that, hey, improve this or improve that or work on that, or that's not great, that's not good. But it's up to you to kind of take it all in and then see what you can do to make it better. Because it's always going to be very difficult to have everyone on one side. It's just not going to happen. But it's up to you to take it in and do something about it.
No, that's great advice, and great advice for I think our younger viewers as well to try and make sure you draw something positive out of any type of comment. And Bob, you know it's a different situation, but in your situation, you don't always hear the most positive comments either from some stakeholders. So how do you translate some of that perseverance into the work you do and the work you lead for NASA Aeronautics?
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think reflecting on what Robbie just said, I think you've got to you have to listen with some objectivity, and what I mean is that oftentimes there's emotion put into these comments, but you sort of have to filter the emotion out and say, what is it objectively they're saying? What can I take from this to make what we're doing here better? Or, what is it? The other part of it is, you know, how is it that I'm not communicating clearly enough what we're trying to accomplish? Um, oftentimes, we, the burden of communication is on the person doing the talking, right? To make sure that get that feedback from the person to make sure that in fact what you are trying to say is actually what they are hearing. And you got to it's that perseverance, you got to stick with it until in fact you have done an effective communication. So it really is trying to there's different levels of listening. Sometimes we just you know, um, we all do it, right? Someone's talking and you're just kind of peripherally listening. Sometimes we listen to try to, because we want to argue back or we just want to refute what the other person's saying. But sometimes, and when we do it right, we really are fully immersed in what the person is saying and really trying to understand where they're coming from. And I think that's when we're at our best because that's when we have full communication.
I agree with you on that, Bob. Too, one of the things that I've learned, even before Benji Lock and all that, is always put yourself in someone else's shoes. Because even with my current team, we all know who has family, kids, and all that. Like we go through so much stuff on a personal level that I know that it's hard to navigate a lot of things, especially with a demanding job or a demanding work, what's going on at home and how people relate to that too. And because when you get to that personal level, it really helps, because then you know what's going on the other side, that sometimes it affects work. And when you get to that really personal level, it really excels to that other point. And I've seen it on my end. So
Yeah, I think that's part of the essence of a really high performance team, is that you don't you've got to have there's got to be a level of trust that enables folks to relate at a personal level, because we don't have these clean lines between, okay, this is, work Bob, and this is, and this is, home Bob, and this is friend, like it's all of me together. And if I'm not letting people know, you know, who I am and how those things affect me, then they can't really appreciate, perhaps how I see things. And I think everybody sort of, that's what it takes to get to that level of next level of teamwork, next level of team performance.
There's a
And it's
couple
hard. I know
questions
you've
in
told
the
me.
chat. Oh, I'm sorry, Bob.
No, I was just going to say, in the previous conversation, of course, we always get ready for these things, and so Robbie and I had a chance to talk before, and Robbie was just so open with, as you said. I mean, you had a whole set of circumstances, both in trying to make this Robbie this Benji lock work, and a lot of that was personal, and you weren't afraid of sharing that, and that's a level of courage and trust that I would hope we can all live up to.
Yeah, and that's a great transition to, there's a couple of questions posted that I'm gonna kinda combine. And Robbie, when you've talked about a lot of the parts of your journey, so there are a couple of questions. What was the most difficult parts of your journey? And 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 was that a point that you really wanted to give up? And if so, what kept you going?
well, that's yeah. There's a lot of moments that happen in my life through this whole process, but I will say probably the most difficult was navigating my personal life, because as you know, a lot of us, especially when you have family, wife, and kids, it's really hard to work on an idea without funding, doing it all of yourself. I had probably 3 credit cards through the roof. At the time I actually stepped on the Shark Tank, I was already like $96,000 in debt. And I'll be straightforward. My wife had the divorce papers twice with me, and I said, I'm not signing, I'll figure this out. And I did. I figured it out, because myself being raised by a single mom, I always knew that I had to be there for my kids and for my family, and I did not want to make the same mistake. But I wanted to have persevered and be able to withstand the emotional distress that this all brought in, but convert it into a positive way. So I know that a lot of us go through a lot of things personally beyond the work, but how are you able to navigate it in a positive way that it will all work out? So that was probably my major hurdle. That built me actually a lot of thick skin. Now that I'm jumping into the whole from startup to a corporate world, nothing hurts me now after going through all that. So I think that was the major hurdle.
Yeah,
That's yeah.
that's spectacular. Bob, you hear those comments from Robbie, and you hear some of the whole themes he spoke to us today about. How can any of this be translated to the workforce within NASA Aeronautics, as well as our university students or who could join our workforce and our industry partners?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look past. Oftentimes you get sucked in by the glossy pages, by here's this, take Robbie, right, this great invention that sort of just came out of nowhere, right? Well, it didn't. It came out of blood, sweat, and tears. And I think it's the same for NASA. You look at I mean, last year we had just a fantastic year, right? We had, the Webb telescope that went up. We had Artemis 1 go up, and for those of us in NASA know that, those programs have gone through a lot. They were, setbacks and failures and challenges, and it really was organizational perseverance that made that happen. So I think that what you take from that is, um, you know, there are two kinds of things we need to look for. One is, sometimes the physics isn't going to work out, and if the physics isn't going to work out, then so be it. We've learned that, and we can apply that to other things. But then there's hey, it looks like it's feasible. We just have to kind of stick with it, and we have to stick through some of the down, the times when things aren't going so well and so forth. And so, just I think think back to when we walk away. Think back to Robbie and the that stick to itiveness, right? That if there's a good idea and if the physics makes sense, and let's not give up on it so easily. Let's stick to it, because I think that's how NASA has succeeded over the years, and obviously that's how Robbie has succeeded. So I think that's the lesson in all of this.
Yeah, wonderful. We could go on for a long time, but I'd get yelled at. So I do want to spend. I'm really fortunate to have you with us today, Robbie. Thank you so much. I want to thank Bob Pierce and our special guest, Robbie Cabral, for joining us today for this wonderful talk on the power of perseverance. I know it's inspired me, as I'm sure it's inspired a lot of our viewers today. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for joining us at imaginAviation.
Thank you.
Thank you.